announcement. All right, everybody, welcome to 3C's ANC September meeting. I'm going to do a little reprise. We have quorum, and our administrator's verified notice has been sent. So now we move to approval of the agenda. The agenda, which I'll post in our chat, is here. There have been two changes to what was posted. One was the removal of the healthcare resolution. Healthcare cost resolution, and the other is the addition of the presentation by DDOT on safe routes to school. All those which is just a brief presentation by DDOT. All those in favor, or sorry, is there any opposition? Anybody opposed to the agenda as written and posted? Okay, we'll move to announcements. Commissioners, do you have any announcements? Okay. Now we'll move to the community forum. This is the part of the agenda where members of the public are invited to ask questions and raise concerns about issues that are not otherwise on our agenda. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. You can do so by clicking the reactions button and choosing the raise hand feature, and we'll call on you. And we've got a question from Mr. Bob Ward. Bob, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hey, this may be an announcement, and Cassandra, I don't know if you're going to announce about the event next Sunday. You'll cover that? Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes, Cassandra. Thank you, Bob, for teeing up Cassandra.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I just wanted to let everybody know that this Sunday, the 25th, from 1 to 5 p.m. in the Cleveland Park Service Lane, we're having an afternoon of music and art activity by Femme Fatale. The music is by a band comprised of the School of Rock instructors. We've got some spray painting to spray paint the service lane. Don't worry, it's washable. And we are collecting canned good, non-perishable food and cleaning supplies for the Ward 3 pantry. So if you want to just come down and listen to some music and drop off a bag of supplies or food, that would be amazing. Oh, thank you, Bo. Perfect. Excellent.
All right. And Cassandra, do you have a link to that you can throw in the chat for everybody?
Maybe I'll try.
Right. And Robert, you're up. And I believe I know what you're going to announce.
I'm having a little bit of fun with the buttons here. I just wanted to also welcome everybody to Art All Night on Saturday. We're starting off with a children's photography competition and lesson at the National Zoo. We're going to have the arts market, a jazz band, and then some different galleries and businesses are going to have different things going on in Woodley Park. So I'll put a little link for further information in the chat.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
Are either of you still looking for volunteers for those events that you just mentioned?
I could use a couple in the afternoon shift. I can post the link in the chat. Thanks for bringing that up, Janelle.
Thank you.
And same for me, anyone who's well known to the neighborhood is welcome, specifically to help people find different places to go and explain what's going on in the neighborhood. I don't necessarily need anybody to lift anything, but to welcome and guide most certainly.
Awesome, thank you.
Great. Thank you. And Ms. Skolnick, who I believe is from Councilmember Bond's office.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Tosha. Oh, no worries at all. Yeah, I work for Councilmember Bonds on the Committee on Housing. I just wanted to give a brief update about some upcoming hearings that we have. This Thursday, the 22nd, we're having a hearing on 3 bills, one related to the condominium warranty claims process, and then 2 bills related to the condominium association and homeowner associations governance. And then next week on the 29th, on Thursday, we're having a roundtable for 3 nominees for the Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors and a hearing on a bill about establishing a district waterways management authority. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much. All right, it looks like everybody who raised their hand has been called upon. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, which was already adopted through approval of the agenda. That item was a resolution on Hearst Park Heritage Willow Oak Trees, authored by Commissioner Siddiqui. And I can throw a link to the chat. But first, we'll now move to a link in the chat to that resolution. We'll now move to commission business. And the first item of commission business is one I think a lot of people are here for, and that is consideration of a resolution supporting a safer Connecticut Avenue redesign. And Commissioner Siddiqui, I believe that is your resolution. I'm happy to turn it over to you or to your designee.
Okay, thank you, Chair Finley. And really, like, this is a resolution that I believe you and Commissioner Pagets have co-authored. So I will give a little bit of background, and I'm also pasting the resolution in the chat so that the latest version of the resolution in the chat so that everyone has it. But you both should feel free to jump in and also field the questions and drive the discussion as it goes on. This is the background of this resolution is that our ANC is aiming to be proactive with the design process that's happening on Connecticut Avenue. We had quite an extensive discussion at our transportation committee, and I was so amazed by the amount of community members who provided input both at that meeting, but also later by email. So much so that a lot of this has changed. Well, not a lot of it, but a lot of it has been added since we last even saw it on Wednesday. So the latest update is in the chat, and what I will do is I will read the resolves because that is where most of the changes did occur. And then I think we can open it up to the way we do it. We can open up to commissioners' discussion and then also have public discussion as well. So it's okay. I will start reading the resolve clauses of the resolution. Therefore, be it resolved, ANC3C continues to and reiterates support of Concept C presented by DDOT as part of the Connecticut Avenue Northwest Reversible Lane Safety and Operations Study. Be it further resolved, ANC3C urges DDOT to prioritize public space access, including parking and loading zones for constituents in need, including individuals with disabilities, as well as children and elderly members of our community in the design process. Be it further resolved, ANC3C urges DDOT to expand the residential parking permit program in the surrounding affected residential areas to increase available spaces reserved for residents, reduce the time period they are unrestricted to non-residents, reserve the majority of this parking for residents for 24/7 use, and eliminate the petition required to implement it immediately. Be it further resolved, ANC3C urges DDOT to expand the residential disability permit parking program to include street parking for eligible residents of multifamily buildings immediately, especially those where occupancy does not otherwise confer residential permit parking. Be it further resolved, ANC3C calls on DDOT to immediately implement other strategies in DDOT's corridor safety improvements for Connecticut Avenue Northwest, including installing dynamic speed feedback signs to provide drivers with visual speed warnings, installing speed enforcement cameras and red light enforcement cameras, and adding pedestrian hybrid beacons, hawk signals, and audible crossing signals. Be it further resolved, ANC3C urges DDOT to implement traffic calming on side streets in ANC3C, including but not limited to speed humps, raised crosswalks, speed cameras, and continued analysis of cut-through traffic on these side streets. Be it further resolved, ANC3C requests DDOT to ensure loading and parking zones be long enough for cars and trucks to easily load and unload, be considered in residential streets, side streets adjacent to Connecticut Avenue Northwest, and be designed to minimize conflict between people, bicycles, and motorized vehicles. Be it further resolved, ANC3C requests DDOT to work with WMATA to prioritize far side or mid-block bus stops, bus priority traffic signals, and improving bus service along Connecticut Avenue Northwest with lower headways, bus lanes, and queue jump lanes, and supplemental bus routes with fewer stops along the avenue. Be it further resolved, ANC3C requests DDOT to work with all stakeholders, including the National Zoo, post office, and businesses, and large multifamily buildings to ensure the redesign meets their needs and maximizes safety. Be it further resolved, ANC3C requests DDOT implement ancillary safety measures for pedestrian and bicyclists with signage and extra space along intersections. Be it further resolved, ANC3C calls on DDOT to immediately remove all rush hour parking restrictions on Connecticut Avenue Northwest. Be it further resolved, ANC3C calls on the District of Columbia Executive Branch to make further efforts to ticket reciprocity with Maryland and Virginia. Be it further resolved, ANC3C authorizes the Chair, Commissioners 3C03, 3C04, and 3C05 to represent the Commission on this matter. And yep, looking for someone with a second.
Yeah, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Pagets.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. First of all, Commissioner Siddiqui, I believe people are editing the document. I think you shared it in edit mode. If you want to change that, or if you have the original, you can share it. I think folks should feel free to
I don't think
comment.
anyone can. I don't think anyone can comment, but I can. Let me turn sharing settings off. But I can always go back to the original. Okay, it's off. I don't think people should be able to comment now. Should change now.
Change, but still comment. Okay, great. So
Yep.
thank you for that. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the commissioners proposing the resolution? Commissioner McWood?
First of all, was the resolution, the draft that you read on the website? Because I went to the website this afternoon and printed out the resolution, and it didn't seem to track with what you read. Is it the same?
No, there has been updates. A lot of people sent updates over the weekend. First Bar Weiner from CPCA sent some updates, and we also had some other updates. But it is the resolution with the link that was originally in the Transportation Committee. It's the same link, so that link always has the most real-time updates on the resolution.
Okay, well, I was using the one this afternoon because I had family visiting this weekend, so to try to find out how the resolution had been changed since the Transportation Committee meeting, which I participated in, and I was really surprised. So I'm not particularly familiar with what you just read, but here's what I'm going to suggest. This is an incredibly important issue. We have twice now passed resolutions with the majority that supports Concept C. This resolution seems to be doubling down yet again on Concept C. We all know Concept C is the one that has been approved and that is going to be implemented. What is most important now is not that we keep sort of patting DDOT on the back or saying, don't worry, we're still behind you on Concept C. What's most important is that we're responding to the community. And there were an awful lot of comments at the Transportation Committee meeting that covered a range of issues. And I don't see, some of them are mentioned in this resolution, but there aren't linkages to sort of cause and effect. There's nothing in the whereas. This is what we're saying, this is what we're concerned about, here are the issues, and then the resolve, which says, and therefore, we highly recommend that DDOT do X, Y, and Z, or that DDOT look at this more closely. I just really think this could be a much stronger, more impactful resolution, and that we ought to table it. I recognize you've got enough people as co-sponsors to probably pass it, but I'm not going to support it because I just think the office of the ANC at this point, our job, our responsibility is to represent the people and make sure that their concerns and the issues are being represented to DDOT. There's a reason why we're concerned about loading. It's because nobody knows what the loading needs are of the businesses. And we know that there's only going to be a third of the loading that we currently have that's going to prevail when this is implemented. The same thing, I don't think parking's even mentioned in this resolution, at least it wasn't on the one that I printed out from our website, and we're losing half of the parking. And these are things, and the resolution is suggesting that we be encouraging DDOT to do loading on the side streets. Well, what does that mean for people? How much room would that take? What would that do to RPP? I think there's an awful lot of cause and effect here that we're being rather casual about. And I would really like to see us not double down on Concept C again. We know it's going to be the concept, but we really dig down as to what people's concerns are, and we find out more from DDOT about what are they really going to do. And how are they going to address some of these things so that we can be more helpful to people? Anyway, that's my comment.
Sure. I mean, Commissioner McWood, all I'll say is that I disagree. I think if you look at this resolution does deal with some of the more important issues that were brought up, especially for our community members with disabilities. It also brings up tons of other issues. There is actually like clauses in there about parking and loading. And if you look at what the things were raised, this was edited real time during that meeting. The vast majority of stuff that people had stated, we have incorporated, and that's why it's also being updated. So I'll just say I disagree with that, Commissioner McWood, but I appreciate your comment. I see Commissioner Packets has her hand up, so I'll let her go next.
Yeah, I mean, regarding the loading, yes, it's something that needs to be looked into. There are no knowns, there are unknown knowns, but we need to move the process forward. The other thing regarding RPP and disability RPP, we did include 2 references to that in the latest and greatest resolution, and specifically regarding RDPP, which is the residential disability permanent parking, that needs to be refined where it's not just for only residents of single family homes. That's incredibly discriminatory. So we did that, and we also included the be it resolved about looking into expanding the time and the spaces available for residents to park on the side streets. So we did hear that, and we included it.
Thank you. Any commissioners with further questions? Okay. We will, I just want to point out that we first approved Concept C, I think about 17 months ago. I said 15 months in the chat. I think it was 17 months ago. And that passed the vote 7-1 to 1. Yeah, and tonight's discussion is about improving Concept C, not relitigating whether to pick Concept C, which was the compromise between sort of ultimate safety and parking. So yeah, moving on. Folks in the public, if you have a question or comment you'd like to raise, please click the reactions button and raise your hand, and I will call on you and ask you to unmute. So that being said, folks, okay. Bar, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, thanks. Let me just pull something up so I don't forget what I want to tell you. So I just had a couple of comments. First of all, I do want to thank Swale for his efforts. The resolution is definitely, I think, much improved on what it was in the original draft, which was a bit more of I felt like a bit more just a reiteration of ANC endorsement for Concept C rather than an engagement on issues. But there are a few issues I just wanted to kind of flag. One, which kind of goes back to what Commissioner McWood was saying a moment ago, is that there are areas, at least where I think whether we have a clear sense of what we think or not, there's been some explanation from DDOT about what they need from us. And in particular on that, I just want to highlight the diversion study issue for our neighborhood. As folks may know from, I think, the last, what do we call it, the CAC committee meeting, there was a presentation from DDOT where they listed criteria for deciding among the various places that they're considering for doing additional study. And Cleveland Park basically is one of those areas. I guess maybe more of the ANC3C area, I'm not sure, but it's one of the areas being considered. But it doesn't mean we're going to make it through in terms of being funded to do the study. So one thing I think would be really important on that is to at least address the criteria that DDOT has already said that they want to hear about in deciding whether to embrace studying a given neighborhood. So I guess one proposal I would have would be to please consider, I just saw this afternoon for the first time, but when this goes to adjusting the whereases or just the resolves, I think going through and really detailing out why we think, not only are we asking for, but why we think that that those studies are needed and justified for our area seems like a really important thing to do, because I think there's been a lot of concern expressed in the neighborhood among our members, among people at the committee last week, et cetera, to the effect that, especially for 34th Street, people trying to get between 34th and Connecticut in the face of traffic, et cetera, that we're going to have some problems if we don't plan ahead. So that was probably my most important comment. Other than that, just a couple things. First, on parking and loading and unloading, I realized that DDOT's doing more work on that. One thing we'd asked about, we commented on this to DDOT, was to have parking on the residential portions of Connecticut Avenue, at least within our strip, as a hopefully somewhat meaningful way to make up for some of the lost parking we'll have because of the one side parking under the concept. And I know they're still thinking through loading and unloading and parking as part of the project, but I assume that's part of why you're doing the resolution, is to highlight things you think they should be paying attention to. And that seems like one area where we could have a fairly straightforward opportunity to improve things, and also, according to DDOT, potentially improve safety by slowing traffic in those areas where right now it might be a little faster because there isn't parking. So just, that was another comment. Regarding safety among bikes, cars, and pedestrians, another concern we've expressed is just that at least we all are clear on what's going to happen. And since the council's been talking about changes to law, and I think there's clearly just anecdotal evidence that we're not all clear on what bikers should or shouldn't be doing on the street, and how cars interact with them and how pedestrians interact with them. I appreciate that the resolution now has things about, or I should say CPC appreciates that the resolution has things about signage and such, but I think having a really stronger campaign and commitment to really making sure everybody's clear what the rules of the road are, both in terms of education of everybody, but also having really clear signage and expectations in that regard, seems key. I'm not sure what else can be done there in terms of really making anything enforcement or promoting compliance. I realize that's really hard, but at least making sure that what's expected is abundantly apparent to everybody.
So, Bar, to answer part of your comment, there are the parking task forces that DDOT will be getting up and running, with consistency of members of the public to identify places where loading, unloading, and parking needs are going to be most extensive, and so that will help inform the sort of the detailed planning of Concept C.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the comment on that about the parking on Connecticut Avenue itself was just that there's already content in the resolution about parking and unloading and unloading right now, and that seems another piece to be worth identifying as something that would be worth supporting, because it would make a real difference to being able to get more people down to the avenue for businesses, and maybe making more space in the immediate business area for loading and unloading, which we know will be a challenge, especially on the west side of the avenue.
So I think as DDOT gives us more to chew on, I think this is one of what will be several resolutions trying to hone what DDOT's looking at, rather than this being the be all end all. Now, a few of us on this call won't be on the commission probably the next time this comes up. We'll just be in the audience pestering people. But the idea that this isn't a one and done, that this is sort of, I think we see it more, and I might be speaking for myself rather than my fellow co-authors here, but this is more of an iterative process where we're trying to help focus DDOT on certain needs, with the understanding that things are going to change as they get deeper and deeper into the planning process.
Fair enough. And maybe this last quick point then, in light of that, thank you, Bo, is that I think and this may be something that really does warrant some more thoughts. Maybe it's not something for today's resolution, but just to raise with you all for future resolutions, perhaps, is I know Swally doesn't like to hear this, and I understand why, but I think the reality is it's going to be very hard to manage loading and unloading for our strip because of the lack of alley space, especially on the west side, and the limited capacity to really do anything off the avenue on the west side in terms of side street, support. So I'm not sure what can be done about this. If it could be something about, early morning flexibilities or something, but I feel like we need to find some way to get people to actually be able to do some work, at least on the west side of the avenue, probably on both sides of the avenue, at odd hours where, there should hopefully be very few bikers and really very few of anybody else, but might discourage or justify strongly discouraging loading and unloading during business hours, which could cause just obviously tremendous backup when there's only 2 lanes each way going forward, in terms of buses not getting through, emergency vehicles, and et cetera, et cetera. So that seems like something we really need to try to think about critically.
I agree, Bar. That is something that, Cassandra Swally and I have had some discussions on this in the past about, loading and unloading and how to, and I think you've been privy to some of those, trying to make sure that loading and unloading doesn't happen or happens in a way that's most efficient and does not block traffic. And that's something that I think that's an ongoing conversation. It's going to be a little difficult with all the construction going on right now with the streetscape redesign to get good data on what the loading and unloading needs are and where that happens. But as we move forward, I think we'll have to keep that in mind. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nick, your hand was up next. You can go ahead, Nick. All right. Hi, Nick. Can you hear us? All right. I'm going to mute Nick and go to Lean. Hi.
Hi. I really appreciate you guys having such an extensive conversation about this. I've considered moving to other parts of the city simply because of the reason it's so hard to leave my apartment on a bike and get access other corridors. And I really think this resolution gives me some hope that I can find safety as a biker leaving my apartment. I think the fact of the matter is that it probably will affect parking and it will affect loading, and there's ways to mitigate that, but it's impossible not to affect those things. But at the end of the day, it might keep more of our neighbors alive, whether they be walkers or parents with kids in strollers or bikers. I know I get on my bike every day with some acknowledgement that this commute might kill me. I always hope that it won't, and I try to take lots of precautions that it won't. But I know friends of friends who have been killed on bikes in the last month. So I really, really appreciate any prioritization of different ways of getting around the city other than cars. I guess what I'm curious about was, what is the expectation in terms of a barrier between bikers and cars? Because I will always die against a car moving 30 miles per hour. And then another concern is when you stagger, one of the things that's been talked about is kind of staggering some loading zones and parking. And one of my concerns about like a stop and start bike lane that can be found, I think like running down 18th Street, is that when you put bikers and walkers in conflict, people don't know how to behave. They don't know how to act unless there's signals and signage and a lot of awareness. And when commuters are coming in from other parts of, like maybe from Maryland, my concern is that, the bikers get hit if there's any of that confusion. So I'm just curious, will there be barriers between cars and bikers? What kind of consistency are we looking for?
So I'll quickly answer. First, thank you for your comments. Yes, so this is a protected bike lane. So we are planning on barriers, and I believe that the final design of the barriers hasn't been defined yet. But it's one of the reasons why I think the barriers are very important. Exactly why you stated, and also why, I know Bar, the comment you made. This is why I don't want people loading in the bike lane. I think that just doesn't make much sense. And then to answer your second question, the loading zones will be on one side of the street, and that side can change, but they will always be separated from the bicycle lanes. So we're going to try and make sure that the loading and parking zones don't conflict with that. But again, we can only do that if it's a protected bike lane and there's no conflict there. But thank you for your questions, and thank you again for commenting.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Bob?
Thanks. So I want to say I think you did a great job with the resolution, and I support it. There's a couple questions, I guess, or comments that I have about what was said earlier. One is about the need for another study, and I think it gets down to whether or not there's going to be, increased use of side street for diversions. And I mean, there's already been a study on this. What I like about the resolution is that there is a resolve clause that talks about traffic calming. You can have all the studies you want, but there's going to be an observation when this actually is implemented. And if there are, increased use of side streets for diversions, then you can implement traffic calming measures. So I guess I'm curious why we need another study when one's already been done. The second thing is I think the community could benefit from the idea of the maps that have been presented from DDOT as sort of really not definitive and maybe just starting points, that these task force that are going to be propping up soon are actually going to be doing the work of figuring out what side of the street the loading and commercial parking is going to be, and where the left turn pockets are going to be, and where the bulb outs are going to be on the side streets, and all of the other safety improvement measures are going to be. That work hasn't been done yet. And so the maps are really just a starting point, a conceptual, like they could look this way, but they don't have to look this way. The loading zones on the commercial area in Cleveland Park could be much larger than what they appear on the map right now. They could be on the other side of the street. There's all of that is yet to be done. And so I think it's important that people realize that, and that, Chairman Finley, as you said, this is going to be an iterative process. Those task force are going to work. And then I imagine the ANC is going to have an opportunity to comment again on whatever it is they collectively come up with. So I support this. I think it's heading in the right direction, and it sets the priorities, both the DDOT and for the task force that are going to be formed about what the community's priorities are. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ward. Commissioners, any responses? All right, thank you. Mr. Rodriguez.
Hello, good evening. My name is Julio. I live over by Quebec and Porter. I'm commenting and hoping that this commission will vote favorably in favor of the resolution. I do not own a car. I don't need a car. And as someone that cycles, I'm really looking forward to be able to get around on his bicycle. As someone that walks to the train, just even that walk alone sometimes can be very dangerous, just considering how fast cars are going. Just the other day, I was crossing the street on Connecticut Avenue, and this Jeep was going 40 miles an hour. So I think we're gonna figure it out. I think that it's really important that this is happening, and I think it should be noted that while there's opposition to this, we should also take a look at who are the people that are opposing this, the people that benefited from being able to purchase a home, from being able to buy in this area. And that was a direct result of historic segregation and discrimination. So I think we should really take a look at how we can work for the people that live here now and for what's best for the overall community. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. And I think Mr. Rodriguez lives right below me, so I apologize if I've been making too much noise in my apartment. Mr. Ide, I'm going to ask you to unmute again. Nick, are you there?
Hello.
Hello, you're on.
Okay, sorry, I'm having trouble with my computer here. Thanks for having me on this evening. I agree with Commissioner McWood, and I guess my fundamental question is, what's the rush to pass this resolution at this time? It feels like there are a number of things to discuss and issues that have been raised, and sort of more discussion and consideration all feels like a good thing. The Connecticut Avenue Concept C has many proponents and detractors. There's belief, but little data. Some of the open questions could be at least somewhat answered by doing a suitable pilot project. For example, one of the major questions is what will happen with car traffic when reducing from 3 lanes of cars to 2. One pilot project could be to prohibit cars from driving in the outermost lane, but allow bicycles, and continue to allow parking and loading, unloading during non-rush hours. This could be mostly achieved with paint and signage and perhaps the occasional delineator posts. Such a pilot would provide data on the impact to car traffic and provide data on the usage by bicycles without disrupting the businesses and others that rely on the current configuration of parking and loading. This kind of pilot project could be done while continuing to study and refine other ideas. It's easy to think up several variations or refinements of such a pilot. The important thing is to do something, get some data, and make it better. So let's do better and figure out a way to make all of this work and keep our businesses afloat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, this is an iterative process. This is not, we're not engineers here. We're not doing traffic engineering here. With regards to the pilot program, you bring up a good point. It's interesting. I'd like to see what DDOT has about the 2 lanes of traffic of Connecticut Avenue and DuPont, where you also have additional Ward 3 traffic. It would be interesting to see because traffic seems to flow pretty smoothly through 2 lanes of Connecticut during rush hour down there and in Calorama. So it would be interesting to see.
That's a very interesting point.
Yeah, so I'm sure since traffic's flowing smoothly there, and it is often the same commuters coming down Connecticut in our neighborhood, it might be a good bellwether to show that reduced lanes actually makes traffic flow more smoothly. But yeah, I would like to see that data from where Connecticut already narrows to 2 lanes. So thank you. Any further comments, folks? Okay. Commissioners, any further discussion?
I'd like to suggest to the sponsors, co-sponsors, that we consider tabling this resolution. I think even a resolution that is iterative ought to capture the issues of the time. And based on the Transportation Committee meeting and emails that I've received, we know a lot more about what the issues and concerns are, and we can connect them in a way that the resolution is currently not connecting them for DDOT, so that if indeed these are our priorities, as expressed by the community, we reflect them as sort of faithfully and strongly as we can. And I don't think the resolution is there. I think we're missing a lot of the important points, and other points could be made more strongly. So I would suggest we table it for a month.
Okay, Commissioner McWood, in the absence of tabling it, do you have suggested language?
I would have to go through absolutely every resolve and every whereas, and add whereases, and no, I can't do that.
Okay.
And besides, isn't this a privileged motion to table? I move to table.
Yes, I think it is. So yeah, so do you have a second? Or is it privilege means it doesn't need a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, great. All right, all those in favor of tabling the motion, please say aye, or actually raise your hand so I can see you on camera. Okay, we've got 2, 4, and all those opposed?
Chair Finley, I oppose.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui.
Also opposed.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Hoyt. Okay, Commissioner Fink. Okay, is Commissioner Fink still on? I do not see him in the list of people here. Okay, so if he is here, he'll be listed as abstain. Rachel, do you see Jason here? Oh, Jason's entered the waiting room. Okay, well,
He's in the waiting room.
all right. I think we'll count that as well. Commissioner Fink, how are you voting? Motion is to table the resolution.
Hey, can we say no to tabling?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Fink. So motion to table fails, and we'll move on with the I guess discussion. Commissioner McWood, if you do have suggested edits, I think this might be the time since the tabling has failed.
Chair Finley, I'd actually like to call the question.
Okay, calling the question, we'll close debate and move us to the vote on the resolution as written without any amendments. Let's see, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, are those in favor of calling the question, closing the debate, and moving to the resolution? Please raise your hand. And all right,
I'm for it.
All right, and Commissioners Fink and Hoyt.
I'm for it.
Okay, Commissioner Fink. Okay, all those opposed? Okay, I see 2, and all those abstaining, that's me. The motion or the call to question passes, and we will now be voting on the resolution as, well, not as amended because it hasn't been amended. All right, all those in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand or say aye for those of you who are not putting your video on.
Aye.
Is that Commissioner?
Aye.
Please, okay, so I recognize voices, but please identify yourselves, you know, when you vote, so Commissioner Hoyt?
This is Commissioner Siddiqui. I vote yes.
Okay, and Commissioner Hoyt?
Commissioner Hoyt voting yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Commissioner Hoyt. Commissioner Fink? I wish you guys would have your video on. All those opposed? Okay, we've got 1. All those abstaining? Okay, it looks like we've got 2. Thank you.
Hey, can we do a roll call vote?
That would have been before we voted, Commissioner Fink. Okay, the motion passes. We are now moving on to next item on our agenda, which is a presentation by the Office of Planning. Oh, and thank you everybody who just showed up for this particular item. Appreciate your feedback, and remember this will be an iterative process, so there will be plenty more time for more feedback and incorporating ideas on how to make Concept C better and more responsive to all users of Connecticut Avenue. I encourage everybody to go to the Transportation Committee meetings, and I apologize, Commissioner Siddiqui, for not using the full name of that committee. I don't remember it offhand, but the Transportation Committee meets pretty regularly and discusses all sorts of transportation safety and equity issues, including Concept C, and it's a great place to bounce ideas off of folks and to try to make our neighborhood safer and better in terms of transportation. It meets the second Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui. With that, we will now move to the presentation by the Office of Planning on the Comprehensive Plans Design Guidelines Processes for Cleveland Park and Woodley Park. We've got Heba here, and I'm going to ask you, great, you're unmuted, and it's yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Finley. Good evening, everyone. Can you get a thumbs up that you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, commissioners, for having me on tonight for the second time over the past few months. I just wanted to give an update on the planning process that the Office of Planning has been undertaking along Connecticut Avenue, specifically in the areas of Cleveland Park and Woodley Park. I'm going to share my screen here. I just have a few slides that I wanted to share with you all. Let's see. Can you all see the screen okay? Seeing a thumbs up, thank you. So just very quickly, some context for those who have not been following the planning process thus far. This is a study to really implement some of the updates of the 2021 comprehensive plan specifically along Connecticut Avenue. Just as background, in portions of the Rock Creek West planning area, particularly along Connecticut Avenue and Wisconsin Avenue, the comprehensive plan adopted new land use designations that are intended to create more opportunities for housing and affordable housing. And City Council approved funding in fiscal year 2022 for further planning analysis in Cleveland Park and Woodley Park, where land use designations have been updated with a focus on urban design and how to kind of support development in those areas to maximize affordable housing production, but do it in a way that is context sensitive to the historic nature of these neighborhoods. The Connecticut Avenue guidelines kind of build on some studies that were done over the past few years. Last year, we released a roadmap for Rock Creek West on how to achieve the affordable housing production goals that was set by the mayor for 2025. There was also a housing equity report that was released in 2019, along with the comprehensive plan update, as well as a study done by the Urban Land Institute about the need of Rock Creek housing, particularly affordable housing in Rockaway Quest. This effort is, we are coordinating across agencies. Of course, you know, this was just being discussed a few minutes ago. We understand the major undertaking, DDOT's undertaking along Connecticut Avenue with the potential introduction of protected bike lanes. And we're making sure that we are coordinating our efforts so that we hear what those concerns are and kind of understand what the role of development could be in kind of mitigating maybe some of these issues. So we're in direct contact with DDOT as well. So really the goals for this study is to develop a set of design guidelines to facilitate the integration of new development into the existing historic neighborhood context. And through this planning process, we are working with a design consultant and the community to identify sites and properties that have an opportunity to redevelop and look at some modeling of massing scenarios for new construction and additions in those commercial areas. And through this modeling, we want to help identify appropriate design strategies such as, you know, building height transitions and setbacks and building stepbacks, you know, streetscape improvements, looking at building materials and articulation that create a visual connection between new development and historic buildings. And really the goal is to set clear development guidelines and expectations for future applications that would require HPRB review. So this is kind of a project timeline. We really kicked things off with the public engagement outreach in the summer, in June, with a number of community walks. We also conducted a public life study, which I will elaborate a little bit more on in a minute. We also had a number of pop-ups. You know, we were tabling at the farmers market and at the library, at the Cleveland Park Library, and in other areas. And then we, in the fall, over the next few weeks, we will be moving into what we're calling design conversations. So that's really when we will be talking with the community about what future development could look like and what design strategies we want to look at to kind of make sure that the development fits within the context of and the historic fabric of the neighborhoods. And then moving into winter of 2023, we would be releasing a draft for public review, revise the document based on feedback that we receive, and then release a final report in the spring of 2023. So as I mentioned, we conducted a number of outreach activities over the summer. We will also be at the Woodley Park Art All Night. Robert just mentioned it earlier in this meeting. So we will be with the Woodley Park Main Street table, welcome table in front of the metro station, the Woodley Park Metro Station entrance. So find us there, and we're happy to talk to you about this planning process and some of the events that you can participate in. We launched a visioning survey in July that lasted about 6 to 8 weeks, and about 1,800, we received about 1,800 participants. We also set up a virtual self-guided walk, mimicking the in-person community walk that we held in June, and we had about 700 views for that walk, for that virtual walk. So along with these activities, and during that time, we've also been gathering data around existing conditions in the study area, as well as conducting an assessment of the public life and public space along Connecticut Avenue. And those, the aim is to release those reports ahead of the fall engagement events that we will be undertaking in October, which I will be talking about in a minute. But the existing conditions report is really going to be providing an overview of the history, demographics, and land use and the public space conditions in and around the study area. And the public life study is a data-driven assessment of social activities that take place in the public sphere. And we actually had a number of community members who helped us conduct this study through volunteering for some of the field work shifts. And you will see the results of this study in the report. So thank you, Commissioner Pigots, and I saw Bob Ward and Ellen Herr here as well, and they helped us with some of the data collection. This is kind of just a very high level summary of some of the feedback from the community that we've been hearing so far. And we're actually going to be holding a webinar early in October that will kind of get a deeper dive into what we've been hearing so far and how this feedback will be informing the design conversations that will follow that webinar. But generally, we started to synthesize this feedback. This slide shows a summary of some of the common themes that align with the goals of the study, and that will be used to inform development and streetscape recommendations in October. And for the interest of time, I'm not really going to go through those, but themes around streetscape improvements and public space improvements. What are specific housing needs for these areas and considerations? What are some of the building design strategies that we want to look at? And what is important for the community in terms of the success of the retail and economic development of the Cleveland Park and Woodley Park commercial areas. So finally, this gets me to what's next, what's coming up. So as I mentioned, on Saturday, we'll be tabling at the Woodley Park Art All Night between the hours of 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. I also want to mention that we will be presenting to HPRB on Thursday morning, just giving a similar presentation to them, giving them an update of where we are. And then in October, we will be holding a webinar on, as I mentioned, what we've heard so far through our summer engagement activities and how this feedback is informing the community design conversations that will be following. We're doing a two-part series. Part one will be focusing on opportunities in Woodley Park, and that will be held in person on Saturday, October 15th, between the hours of 10:30 and 1:30 p.m. So it's at a drop-in basis. It'll be at the Oyster Adams Bilingual School campus on Calvert Street. And then the part two of it will be focusing on the Cleveland Park opportunity sites, and that will be held on October 22nd, same time between the hours of 10:30 and 1:30 at the Cleveland Park Library. So all this information is on the project website. You can register online, the links are there. Anyone can attend, it's open to the public, but we do like to create a registration link just to get an idea of how many people to expect, so we are staffing appropriately. But we'll have information, background information, existing conditions information, and then we'll have kind of more of the design tables where we will be having more of one-on-one discussions about some of the development strategies that could occur in the neighborhood. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Eva. Fellow commissioners, do you have any questions for the Office of Planning?
Oh, I do.
Go ahead, Commissioner Paggets.
Thank you. This is very helpful. With our previous discussion with the concept C, it would be great if there were some guidelines as to the signage too, like the cross collaboration between, with the streetscapes and all of that, with the discussion on bikes and pedestrians and cars all interacting, and what kind of, can be incorporated with these design guidelines to kind of make sure that we're addressing that bit in this exercise as well. I think I saw, the mention of metro and transport options too on your slide. So you don't have to have an answer now. I'm just.
Yes. No, but that's a great point, because we do talk about placemaking and wayfinding and signage. We talk about it in terms of the zoo and wayfinding there, but also you raise a good point, looking into the future and the changes that will occur on Connecticut Avenue and how disorienting it could be and how signage can play a role in kind of really improving the safety along the corridor.
And the opportunities and options too, because when I was down doing that survey and helping out with that, you know, the nearest Capital bike share station to the Woodley Park Metro is not like well indicated, and I had to direct several families over to that. So you know, that would be helpful.
Great.
Also, just putting right there would be great too, but you know, we're not here to solve all the problems in one night.
But thank you for that input.
Great. Any other commissioners? Oh, and Heba, could you share the links in the chat? I know that Todd Kane shared the publicinput.com link, but anything else you have to share, could you throw it in the chat when?
Sure, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here and I'll start dropping those links in the chat.
I appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just curious. My Wi-Fi dropped out before. Is there a time frame for this project? When this might occur?
So we are in the middle of the planning process right now. So as I mentioned, we kicked things off with a visioning survey and community walks, just hearing about what people value about the neighborhoods, how, you know, development can positively kind of contribute to the growth of those neighborhoods. So that was in the summer, and then we're going to go into the fall design conversations, starting to look at what future development could potentially look like and how it can fit within the context of the historic neighborhoods. And then we expect to release a draft study in early 2023, winter 2023, for public feedback, and then kind of make any revisions necessary and release a final report in spring of 2023.
So you don't have, really isn't a target construction date for any of this?
No, so the goal of the study is to set development design guidelines so that when private property owners or developers choose to redevelop their property, this study would serve as guidance for what the community wants to see in terms of building form, in terms of streetscape improvements, in terms of public space improvements. So this is really a guide for any future private development that might.
Okay, I apologize. I thought this was going to turn out to be a DC construction project. I should say another DC construction project. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Bob, you've got your hand up too.
I do. Thanks. I have my question is earlier on, I think in your previous presentation, you guys talked about conducting this study with looking through a lens of racial equity. Can you give examples of how that might manifest itself through this process?
Sure. So you'll start seeing some of that in the existing conditions report that we'll be releasing. The aim is towards the end of this month. But when we look at demographics and social and economic characteristics of households in the study area, we start to disaggregate this data by race. So understanding, there's median household income, there's age groups, racial breakdown, but then what is the breakdown of household incomes by race? What is the breakdown of housing tenure by race? That sort of thing. So we do that when we're looking at history and existing conditions and land use practices and that sort of thing. And then for our surveys, we also try to collect demographic data. Now, responding to those questions are always optional, but for those who do respond, we also start to look at the data by the different demographics. So how did different groups of people respond to the different questions of the survey? So one example, looking at how renters respond to surveys versus homeowners, how people of certain race respond to questions versus others, age groups, again, household incomes, that sort of thing. So we'll look at the data through that lens as well as look at the survey data through that lens as well. It's just so we get a better understanding of who we're hearing from and how they're responding to the questions. Because also sometimes, or a lot of the times, our surveys the demographics are not necessarily reflective of the actual demographics of the study area. Certain groups of people just tend to respond to online surveys more than others. So that's why we also want to look at disaggregating this information. And then we do more of individual outreach to people that we know are harder to reach.
Great, thank you for that
Thank you.
response. Commissioner McWood, sorry, Ms. Epstein, but Commissioner McWood, I'm going to call on her first, then on you. Thank you, Heba, for your response to Bob.
Sorry about that, Jamie. I was very interested, Heba, in what you were just talking about, the racial equity analysis, because to my knowledge, OP has not really been doing much with racial equity analysis, so particularly with development projects. So what I'm particularly interested in is how this would inform design guidelines, or if with this knowledge, which is really important for things like income by race, when we know that inclusionary zoning reaches people at 60% MFI and above, and the median income for people of color in the district is more like 50% MFI, and that's the median. Is this going to help to inform policy decisions by OP? Because I don't quite understand how this would inform design guidelines, but it's very important information, and I really do think it should have policy impacts.
Yeah, again, I mean, the study is focused on how development, in terms of form and mass, fits within the neighborhood, because we heard a lot of concerns about, what does this density, how is it impacting the neighborhood? Right now, the commercial areas are 1 to 2 stories, particularly in Cleveland Park, maybe 2 to 3 in Woodley Park. So we want to look at the form and massing, but we can also certainly look at how, recommendations around how to prioritize housing for lower income households. So we can coordinate with DHCD on, whether we can incorporate some policy recommendations that support the design guidelines as well.
Yeah, because if you're using the information simply to argue for density, as that's going to somehow help with the racial equity profile in the community, then I think you've really got to be looking at IZ, because if you're talking about only an 8 or 10% set aside for affordable housing, and then you're targeting people who are 60% MFI, that's really at odds with what supposedly the goal is and what the information is providing. So I really do hope that you use it for some policy guidance.
Yeah, and IZ is 8 to 10%. I think the goal of this study is to look at how to leverage the change in land use designations to trigger IZ plus, which would allow for then more closer to 20% set aside units, and that would,
yeah, but 20%
affordable housing.
Yeah, 20% is the maximum. I mean, it's a range. 20% ought to be the minimum, frankly. But anyway, I've said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McWood. And yes, I'd like to emphasize some of those points. I think we need to, I hope OP continues to look at how to expand its racial equity lens to really account for the fact that we've got a massive wealth disparity and income disparity along racial lines in our city. And Ms. Epstein.
Thank you. And I'm glad to follow Commissioner McWood and your comment, just Bo, that I really want to raise up that effort to use the racial equity lens to affect the policy here, which really relates to a question I had. My understanding on one of the walks that I went on was that OP would be looking to listen to not just people who live in the community now, but people who may want to live in our community but have been historically excluded and can't afford to live here. So I wanted to, and I know you just mentioned reaching out to people who might not respond to the survey. Other ideas might include talking to people who work in Cleveland Park and Woodley Park, but don't live here. So I was just wondering what efforts had already been made to reach out to people who might like to live here but can't, or have been excluded, or what efforts there will be. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So this is something that we're definitely looking into and working with our engagement consultant, Brick and Story, to kind of leverage their contacts and reach out to people who may not be in Cleveland Park today, but have just been not considered it for, whether it's unattainable or for different reasons, and understanding what those reasons are. So we are pursuing that avenue. Through the survey that we've conducted, we did have a question that asks, if you're not a current resident, what are the barriers that prevents you from living in those two neighborhoods? And what are some of the opportunities that would allow you to be there? Again, you would have to know about the survey to take it, but we did have some survey takers who were not, who were currently not residents of the study area or the neighborhoods. So we will be looking at those responses as well. But yes, we're looking at doing some more targeted outreach to businesses, to apartment dwellers and other groups.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Pagets.
Yeah, I was actually going to comment on the previous thing about the IZ set aside, but Jamie, you brought up a comment that when I was doing the surveys as part of this, one of the questions on the Intercept survey that we had was, what was one thing, or what were 3 things you'd like to do in Cleveland Park that you can't do right now? And one of the young folks that was sitting outside the library enjoying their Vache's pizzas said, live here. And that really cut right through me. So yeah. But to the IZ, my understanding is we do have a project over on Wisconsin Avenue that the Office of the Attorney General has issued the statement through the lens of racial equity in support of the zoning amendment application for that. And I believe that comes, Nancy, you have the calendar memorized better than I do, in front of BZA at the end of October 23rd, the Wisco Wally project.
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
getting it confused with the one that's on the other corner, which is in December. Yeah, I think it's the end of October.
Yeah, and I think that is the first project in Ward 3 that's being looked at through that lens of racial equality, and the OAG wrote a very excellent letter in support of that. So it's progress. We're moving forward. You can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. So I'm glad to see we're making some progress.
There are actually, Janelle, there are a couple of projects in Friendship Heights that are before the, one before the Zoning Commission, one before the BZA, that have racial equity analysis submissions included.
Excellent. Well, Ward 3.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Pagets. Are there any other comments from folks, questions for the Office of Planning? Okay. Well, thank you all for a nice discussion, and thank you, Heba, for spending the time with us this evening to keep us up to date, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thank you for having me. Take care, everyone.
Take care. So moving forward is consideration of a resolution on policy proposals to help small businesses thrive, and I will be presenting the resolution, but I will not be asking for a vote, more to trigger discussion, and I'm trying to figure out how to share it with folks so everybody can see it. Let's see. All right, I'll throw it in the chat. A second. Pardon my technical limitations here. All right, there's the link. And so I can share it, but I'm going to read it instead. So instead of sharing screen. So this is written a little differently. It's a different style as recommended by former director of the Office of ANCs, Gottlieb Simon. We've heard for years that our resolutions are written a little too formalistically for agencies to figure out what our points are. I disagree that that's fully the case, but you know, in an effort to try something new, I've written this with the resolve clauses up front. I'll read it. Okay, this would be sent to the mayor, council, deputy mayor for economic development, and the Department of Small and Developing Businesses. Resolved, ANC3C requests that the Department of Small and Local Business Development, DSLBD, the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, DEMPED, and Council explore adopting the following strategies to foster small, locally owned businesses and to provide opportunities to protect existing small, locally owned businesses from substantial commercial rent increases. Commercial rent stabilization for qualifying small, locally owned businesses, coupled with a complementary tax credit for commercial landlords that participate. ANC3C recommends that a qualifying business has ownership consisting of at least one district resident, making up no less than 33% of the ownership. For example, if an ownership group consists of 5 people, at least 2 of those people must be district residents. ANC3C recommends that district officials consider attaching further qualifications, such as, but not excluded to, maximum gross annual receipts or number of workers employed by a business. ANC3C recommends that district officials create a complementary tax credit for commercial landlords that agree to participate in commercial rent stabilization to provide an incentive for landlords to help keep rents affordable for small, locally owned businesses. ANC3C further recommends that district officials determine an appropriate percentage plus inflation formula for permissible commercial rent increases under the program. Second recommendation, to foster local businesses through commercial set-asides in mixed-use buildings using district funds. ANC3C recommends that district officials require mixed use and commercial projects that use district funds to set aside no less than 25% of retail or restaurant space for small, locally owned businesses. To avoid increasing commercial vacancies, ANC3C also recommends district officials analyze whether there should be a release valve of sorts to prevent a space from staying vacant due to inadequate interest from small, locally owned businesses. ANC3C further recommends that district officials use the size or zoning of a project for the threshold to determine whether the set-aside is required. Third recommendation, enforce the vacancy tax and increase the speed at which the commercial vacancy tax is implemented. ANC3C recommends district officials enforce existing vacancy tax provisions and adopt the recommendations of the district auditor. ANC3C further recommends district officials consider increasing the speed at which the commercial vacancy tax is implemented to incent more rapid reuse of commercial space, either by tenants or short-term pop-ups. And then the reasoning is that small and locally owned businesses help give neighborhoods character, foster community, and provide good jobs. However, many of these same businesses face substantial hurdles during uncertain economic times. In Cleveland Park, we've seen a lot of challenges. Numerous business owners have cited rising unaffordable commercial rents as one of their biggest challenges. When a business leaves, the space is often left vacant for an extended period of time. In the case of Polena, formerly located at the Park and Shop, the space remained vacant for over 6 years until a new tenant, Chase Bank, moved in. 3407 Connecticut Avenue, which is home to Fat Pete's, contained a McDonald's for many years, but after the McDonald's closed in 2004, the space remained vacant until 2011. When multiple spaces are vacant for an extended period of time, a neighborhood may begin to look neglected, which can compound the decrease in consumer traffic. And so tonight we're just going to discuss this. We're not going to vote on it. It doesn't need a second or anything like that. It's more of a, how can we make these ideas better? How can we, make sure that our small locally owned businesses have protections, because it is a dog-eat-dog world out there in our capitalist society, and there are many major corporations such as Target and now Amazon that are moving into brick and mortar shops and pushing out, some of the businesses we know and love. So in effort to give them a little bit of help with a potentially revenue neutral commercial rent stabilization process, I'd like to see what else we can do. So please, if you've got ideas, if you take a look, everybody should have the opportunity through their Google account to comment on this. I see that numerous people have highlighted different sections, which made for fun reading. But you can leave a comment considered a suggestion in the language of Google Docs. But that being said, I'll open it up for discussion among commissioners first, and then we'll move to opening up to the general public. Thank you.
Just wanted to say that, some people said you shouldn't bag on Target too much because they really like that Target. So.
What? Was that a joke?
Well, thank you, commissioners.
So,
Commissioner McWood, yes. And thank you for your questions and helping me hone this.
sure. And I won't take up time with that. I appreciate the fact that you're going to give us some time to work on this because there's some very interesting ideas here. The one thing I would suggest that just in terms of sort of the language changes in the first paragraph where you say explore adopting the following strategies to foster small locally owned businesses, to say explore adopting strategies to foster small locally owned businesses, including the following. Because I think what we ultimately want to do is to encourage the council to introduce some legislation and or have some hearings to explore not only your ideas, but other ideas that may be out there to support small and local businesses. And your model, which seems to build on rent stabilization, is really quite interesting. And I appreciate the opportunity to work a little bit more on it. And I'm particularly interested to hear what people in the community think.
Thank you. So could you repeat where you wanted including? Because I'm actually putting it in the document now.
Okay, it's under your first resolve.
Yep.
It's the third line, and it says explore adopting.
And remove the following. And then
yeah, I would do explore adopting strategies to foster small locally owned businesses, including the following.
Okay, gotcha.
To foster or to, you got the idea.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, let me see. Don't see a lot of hands up. So this, the genesis of this document or this resolution is through lots of conversations with businesses up and down Connecticut, Wisconsin Avenue, finding out sort of what some of their major challenges are and what we can do to ameliorate them. This also came from sort of a robust discussion that went over a couple months in spring about how to assist with downtown redevelopment, given the massive change in the need for commercial real estate for office space, really, and how we can transition to mixed use, how we can incent that behavior, and what to do while we have many vacancies downtown. So yes, Robert, you've got your hand up.
Thank you very much. I'd like to support, first of all, the resolution, and second of all, also Commissioner McWood's comments. I think this is a wonderful way to start. I'm particularly supportive of the vacancy tax ideas that are in this, because right now, if you look at Woodley Park, there's a storefront vacancy of about 25%, which is almost unheard of for property on Connecticut Avenue. And a lot of that is long-term vacant. And we fear that things like the former Ace Hardware property, which right now looks like a metal awning on the outside and has 3 broken windows over the last 3 weeks, that starts to become a more regular thing that we see for exactly the reasons that you said. Fewer people come into the area, it starts to look dilapidated. That hurts the other businesses. As a bit of context, the proposals that are in here are a very good start. but are also very difficult to change the situation for a lot of the existing businesses.
Yes.
I know of many businesses that are $100,000, $200,000 in debt, and that we're talking to about their business plan for reasons that fall outside of this. Now, that this may be different in other parts of 3C, but Woodley has, of course, the Wardman, the Zoo, and the Omni, all three operating at a much lower capacity than they used to, which is an impact of its own. But again, I love this idea, and I'd love to be involved in shaping it further.
That would be great. And to the extent you'd be willing to contribute any data, that would be wonderful to give us the support necessary to get this ball rolling.
Happy to do it.
Thank you. And I did speak with Cassandra in workshopping this, and so I want to thank her for her input, and I'm sure she's got more tonight, having had more time to sit with it. But next up is Bar.
Thanks very much. I don't want to put Cassandra on the spot, but she wants to start first. I'm happy to defer and maybe not say as much when she's weighed in, or I can just talk.
I have had some time to think about this vote, and I think I love the intent, absolutely, 100%. My concern is that most of the small businesses that we love in Cleveland Park, their owners do not live in the District of Columbia, and I'm wondering if there is any way to bring them into this too, because off the top of my head, I can only literally think of one business owner that even lives in DC, maybe two.
Yeah, so that's something that I believe the owner of Streets lives in DC, and actually in Cleveland Park, and I know the owners of Tracy Eagleburger live in Cleveland Park, but and the owners of Nanny's live in Cleveland Park as well, or some of them, but and Atomic, but the residency thing, I think is it's different than, for example, the paid family leave. I think the residency needs to be non-negotiable. We need to be making sure we're helping DC residents first. We've got huge income disparities in this city. We've got a lot of entrepreneurial people who are, having difficulty getting started, and so this is to, on the margins, I think help them. And I understand and I empathize with businesses that do not have district residents. Perhaps they should consider moving into our lovely city. We've got a great metro system, but they'd be close to work, on the metro. But I hear you there, and I don't think we should be extending this to non-DC residents. I mean, granted, this is something that obviously would not be for 3C to decide. This is just a series of proposals to present for actual policymakers to then implement how they see fit. But I personally would advocate to maintain a residency requirement. Bar?
Thanks. On that first point, I appreciate your point, Bo. But I guess the question for me would be that if this is a proposal from an ANC as opposed to a mayor's office discussion, it seems reasonable to at least have part of the analysis be about what the neighborhoods need, and make sure that it is sort of factored in, that we aren't missing an opportunity to kind of help our businesses survive that we care about. So maybe there's a way to nuance that, but just wanted to flag that.
Right. Well, thank you. So real quick, just a quick response. Sure. Only the commercial rent stabilization part would apply to residents only. The rest of the proposals are residency neutral.
Fair point. Thank you. And then just mentioning, Cassandra didn't bring it up, but we are trying to gather some data that might be helpful for CPMS and with some help from CPCA folks. So if we have anything useful, beyond what already is there, should already share with you, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
And the last thing is just, I guess going to what Nancy was saying, I'm not sophisticated on this, so I don't want to waste your time, but I understand there are some other costs, like CAM costs are probably a major problem right now for retail. And I'm not sure if maybe that'll be mitigated by having your rent go down, obviously, but exactly what the primary challenges are, whether it's really a distorted rent level or something else, might affect how tenable the proposals are that we make. So I guess more data might be helpful to the process, but I just want to say I definitely support, we have not discussed this in CPCA yet, we didn't have time, but definitely think it's a great idea. And thank you for taking it on.
Thank you. Commissioner Pagets.
Yeah, with the residency requirement, I really would like to see more of like the first source or whatever, employing more district residents. I think it would be great if the folks who worked at the, establishments on the Cleveland Park Strip lived in Cleveland Park. I understand that there's an affordability issue with housing supply there. That would alleviate issues of employees having to park in these spaces that and it's just, I don't know what the solution is, but to look at it holistically and understand like the effects and the causations and all of this stuff, it's like, we could do better. Always.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And one of the things I've been considering and it came up a lot this spring was the idea of what generates foot traffic, what generates bringing more people to a business area. And I know Cassandra and I've talked about this, and there's different things that we can do in Cleveland Park and Woodley Park and Cathedral Heights to generate more foot traffic. And I honestly think it comes down to having the space for the arts, really. Arts, somebody coming down to see something in a black box theater, whether a black box theater formerly was a Walgreens or something else, it really doesn't matter. That's one of the great things about the Fringe Festival is that it brings lots of folks to parts of the city that are in transition, which helps the local economy, at least briefly. But the arts could be very helpful in this, and it's something that I'd like to discuss further as we move along. Anybody else have any comments on the resolution? And it'll be on our website for, and it'll be that same Google Doc, so you can comment if you'd like, or you can shoot me an email. I'll throw my email address in the chat so that if you've got ideas or you'd like to be further involved with fleshing this out, you can let me know. Great. Okay. Moving on, last but not least, and I appreciate their patience, we've got a presentation from the Department of Transportation on safe routes to school. And I know that Christian is here, and Christian, I'm going to ask you to unmute. And I'm sure you've got a team.
Hey, Bo, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing, sir?
I'm great. I do have my colleague with me, Gina. So we're ready to rock and roll. Thanks for including us last minute.
Thank you. Thank you. And Janelle, could you make Gina and Christian co-hosts?
I'm looking.
Regina Arlotto.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you find me?
I have not.
I can see you, but I don't have the authority.
Okay. I can make Christian one.
See. Just RA in purple on my screen.
This is very strange.
Well, Gina, will you be sharing anything?
Yes, I do have a PowerPoint.
Okay. Okay.
I see her, but I can't. I can't do it.
So Janelle, this is I'm gonna Zoom explain. I apologize.
Here, Bo, I'm going to make you the host.
Okay.
You're the host now.
Great. Thank you. And Regina's now co-host.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Perfect.
All right. So thank you. And without further ado,
So can you see my screen? Do you see the Amalfi Coast, or do you see Safe School Streets pilot program?
We see the PowerPoint in non-presentation mode.
Perfect. All right. Excellent. Hello, everyone. My name is Gina Arlotto. I am one of two Safe Routes to School planners at DDOT. Some of you may have met my colleague, Derek Hardy, who has been in the position for quite some time. I started at DDOT in March of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. We have been working very hard with the Vision Zero folks to come up with some ideas to really start to proactively counter what is happening in front of our schools. And it's the same in front of almost every single school that I have observed in the last couple of years. that first block in front of a school at the main entrance is, and I'm sure if you're a parent or you're a neighbor, you have witnessed the chaos and the unsafe driving behaviors and the very dangerous situations that a lot of our children are experiencing, especially at morning drop-off. It seems to be a very frenzied, chaotic place. So in talking with and working with our, let's see, this is gonna, here we go. With our Vision Zero partners, we have come up with an idea for a pilot program. We're calling it Safe School Streets. This is something that has been rolled out in a number of European cities. I'm not sure if it has been rolled out. I think there are a couple of cities in the United States that are trying this, and it's where they close a block in front of the school at the main entrance to give just to get the chaos away from the front entrance, to give more space for children arriving by walking or riding their bikes. For the pilot that we are proposing, we are going to do it on Walk to School Day, which is October 12th this year. It is usually the first Wednesday in October, but this year, the first Wednesday in October is Rosh Hashanah, I believe. So we are moving it to the next week. So this pilot program will be for one day, or the schools can choose either morning, have it the block closed in front of their school for a couple of hours in the morning and a couple of hours in the afternoon. We are only rolling this out at one school per ward this year. And we did vet the schools that we offered this program to for a number of factors. They couldn't be on a major bus route. They couldn't be on an arterial, that kind of stuff. We did want to get schools in all 8 wards, but we did approach the schools initially and of course gave them the option. We are still trying to secure a school in Ward 5 or Ward 8. So if you know anybody there who might be interested, shoot me an email. The purpose of this will allow for a safer drop off and pickup on a critical day, Walk to School Day. It will also promote alternative modes of transportation. We will have materials there to educate parents on safe drop off and pickup procedures. And also, one of the things that we're really hoping to do is to highlight for residents and commuters, perhaps, that this is a school block and it deserves attention and the proper highlighting of a zone where there may be children unexpectedly moving through the intersections and that kind of thing. If the schools choose an all-day closure, we will, well, I guess let me back up. Each school block will be staffed with additional traffic control officers and DDOT staff. So we will be there to help monitor the barriers, which are movable. Of course, we will not access for buses or residents who maybe still need to get didn't realize that the block was going to be closed and need to get their car off the block. And if a school chooses an all-day closure, they can do something like perhaps a reading circle, an art project. You can see the bottom here in the slide right now we can do some chalk designs. We can think about, we even have some engineering materials that I'm hoping to give out to some of the older elementary school students where they can kind of envision the built environment and think about what they want within their neighborhood. And we also are hoping to test this pilot to roll it out in the future years, to roll it out to other schools, perhaps on the first day of school, which is always pretty chaotic. A lot of parents wanting to take pictures, but not wanting to perhaps necessarily park appropriately or walk their kids to school. And I will say that this pilot has generated a lot of excitement within the council and within the executive office of the mayor. They are drafting some language to write this into the Safe Routes to School expansion bill, which is currently pending in the council, to roll this out in 2024 to additional schools, and to pick different days, or to, to kind of figure out how perhaps we can roll this out more widely. DDOT, we are using the existing legislation, which is for play streets, which allows us and gives DDOT the authority to close a street block in front of a school to allow for congregating and the safer arrival and dismissal of children. It's something that we discovered when we were trying to think of ways to open the streets up for children during the pandemic. But it is an existing legislation, so we don't need to go through a lot of permitting or through the tops. We can do this under the DDOT authority, the Play Streets legislation. That does not mean, however, that we are not going to do our due diligence with the neighbors and of course the ANC, which is why I'm here with you tonight. We do want everyone to be a champion of this, and we're really excited about it. And we hope that you will be too. Let's see, I'll go to my next slide. So obviously, why are we doing this? Many of you may remember on Walk to School Day last year, a dad and his two daughters were struck in a crosswalk, crossing the street with the light. Not quite in front of their school, but barely a half a block away from that. We also have a lot of issues with students and parents, doing things that perhaps they're just not aware are as unsafe as they are. Mid-block crossings where you drive up and let your child out on the opposite side of the street and try to kind of wave them across, or sometimes perhaps you might walk across yourself. It's extremely dangerous. I have already this year witnessed a near miss of exactly this kind of thing. So we're trying to be proactive here and trying to get to things before they someone else is hurt. Here are the logistics. This is just a sample school. Actually, that's Eaton. I think Eaton is our sample school. It's so perfect. So we'll be on National Walk and Roll School Day, October 12th. The hours, as I mentioned before, will vary by school. The routes for arrival and dismissal will occur on the adjacent streets. Of course, we understand 34th Street for Eaton is not really a spot for a drop-off area, but we would have TCOs directing traffic to down Macomb, make a right on 33rd Place, and dropping the students off at that end, or perhaps parking in one of the adjacent blocks and crossing and walking to school with your child that one day. The residential parking, we don't envision much parking impacts beyond the closed block. And one of the reasons we chose Eaton is because, there's only a very few houses on the opposite side of the school there. So we're hoping that it's not going to be a huge inconvenience for the residents there on that block. We may need to adjust the adjacent blocks, but as I mentioned, I don't think at Eaton, some of the other schools that we've chosen for this pilot will probably need some adjustment. We may need to do some no parking on some adjacent blocks for the hours of the pilot project. And I think, well, here is the picture, Eaton Elementary. The closure will be Lowell Street between 33rd Place and 34th Street. This is just a little extra info here. Of course, a pilot project such as this does fall within our MOVE DC 2021 goals. It provides for safety, it improves mobility, it's a sustainable option. And also, perhaps most importantly, it makes that first block in front of a school a little more enjoyable, a little bit safer for children. as they move to and into their schools in the mornings and the afternoons. Again, my name is Gina Arlotto. There's my email there. Christine Mayer is our Vision Zero representative or Vision Zero person. And so she and I both are working on this. The next steps after this meeting, we have a DDOT point of contact for each school. They are reaching out to the school administration this week to determine what hours they would like, to give us some numbers so we can print out the flyers, to let us know, we'll have lots of fun swag to give out on that day. I totally blew my swag budget this year on bike lights and reflective bike spoke covers, but some super fun stuff that we hope we'll be distributing that day.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Arlotto?
Yes. This is really interesting program. I'm Commissioner McWood, and Eaton is in my SMD. When the school was chosen, are you talking to the parents group and the new principal, or did I hear you correctly? They're only going to learn about this week? That's not.
No. We reached out to the school administrators, the principals, and if we had a name for a PTA representative, we reached out to them as well. And we got definite confirmation from the Eaton principal.
Okay. Because we've got a teacher parking program, and there are a couple of spaces on Lowell Street in that block that not very many that are designated for teacher parking.
Okay.
So I'm very happy that you've chosen Eaton. I think it's terrific. But I'll just email you separately about that.
Yes, do. And yeah, our point of contact for that is another DDOT staff within the Vision Zero program, and he's going to be reaching out. So he'll definitely want to know that.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Gina, real quick, are you not doing anything at Oyster, or is this?
Yes, no, we're not doing Oyster. Okay. I don't think who our Ward 2 school is.
Well, no, is Eaton the only Ward 3 school you're doing this at?
That's right. I was thinking maybe Oyster was in 1 or 2, but is it also in 3? No, we just picked one school per ward for this particular rollout. I mean, it's possible if this works out as great as we hope it's going to be, we can roll out to more schools, perhaps at Bike to School Day in May.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, commissioners, any further questions or comments? Folks who.
My only comment is I like that you're soliciting the feedback from the kids, because they tend to be the most honest commenters without a set agenda.
Yeah.
And can provide, the way that they experience the world. And I think that that's really a great source of input.
Yeah, we one of the things that we did with our consultant contract in the last couple of years was we had hired a consultant, Finola Quinn, who does the traffic gardens, and she did like a whole kit of all these great materials to kind of spur thought and consideration of the built environment. And so it's specifically geared towards kids. It's super fun. Yeah, so I'm hoping to get those out of my office and into the schools that are going to be doing this year.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir about getting kids involved in understanding and being interested in the built environment and how they can interact with it, hopefully become engineers one day themselves.
Oh, exactly. No, it's a really great. I mean, I think when kids can understand that they can have an impact on that and how they move through spaces, I think it's a great career. It's a good gig.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Folks out there in In Zoom land, any questions or comments for DDOT? All right. Well, thank you, Gina. Thank you, Christian. And yeah, we hope it goes quite well. And Christian, I hope you can let us know how it went at the next meeting when you swing by. So really
Sounds good.
I appreciate you all coming
Thank you
out.
so much.
Thank you. So that concludes commission business for the evening. We now move on to other business. And give me a second. There we go. Okay. And we will begin with the secretary's report, which would be the minutes. Secretary Reba is not here this evening, but he did email around the minutes. Does any commissioners have any edits or suggestions? I'm going to present Secretary Reba's minutes, but does anybody, before I do so, does anybody have any, I'm going to present them. Does anybody have any edits to them? Any commissioners?
I'm a bit concerned we might have lost a quorum here.
Oh.
Does that matter?
It does matter.
Okay.
I see.
You got me, you.
Yeah, I do not see.
Commissioner Dwyer, Commissioner McWood.
All right, you're correct. You do not have quorum.
Yeah. Unless you see somebody I don't.
I do not see. No, I do not. No, we do not have quorum. You're correct.
Okay.
All right. Commissioners, that means our meeting is adjourned, basically.
Well, no, we just we can't vote.
We can't vote on anything, so we cannot vote
We
on
can
the
do
minutes.
anything else,
Right.
we can't vote.
I will, given that we cannot vote on the minutes, I will skip that and move to the treasurer's report. Now, Commissioner Siddiqui did indicate that there was a possibility he was not going to be able to make it this far into the meeting due to a flight. He has provided his update,
but no vote is needed on this.
But no vote is needed. It is merely an update.
Oh,
And
we're good.
Let's see. I know he sent it. I gotta find it really quickly. And Commissioner Pagets, I know you were CC'd on that. If you have it,
I do have it. There's nothing to vote on at this meeting, but there are just informative items. We'll be writing a check to our administrator, Rachel, for $691.77 for pay for the months of July and August. We'll be writing a check for Waters Ward LLC for $150 for website hosting fees.
okay. Thank you for filling in for Treasurer Siddiqui, Commissioner Pagets. And
No problem.
That moves us from the treasurer's report to single member district reports, which Commissioner McWood, I know you and I were both on that email from Commissioner Reba. And would you like to do the honors or shall
I? Totally up to you.
Part of me thinks that if you're not here, you don't get to do your report, but but I did not tell Commissioner Reba that. I will read his SMD report as quickly as I can. This is Commissioner Reba's SMD report from 3C01. Iridescent traffic lights north and south at the Kennedy Warren driveway appear to be part of the traffic and accident problems at the intersection. Ed Stoloff at DDOT has been notified. Commissioner Reba also conducted a community walkabout with the Department of Health and Department of Public Works on Wednesday, September 7th, focusing on a commercial residential alley along the 2600 block of Connecticut and Woodley Place and the 2700 block of Woodley Place, Connecticut, up to All Souls Episcopal Church. Several infractions were identified and are in the midst of being addressed. Future public health outreach programs will include, this is a new item, will include 1, Public Health Community Empowerment Captains Program, known as PHCECP, and 2, Work with the Community Public Health Open Forums, details to follow. And finally, it was brought to Commissioner Reba's attention that individuals are allegedly selling pot in front of the All Souls Episcopal Church. Any suspicious behavior should be reported to 311 immediately. Okay, that is Commissioner Reba's report. And moving, I believe Commissioner Fink is not here. And so we will move to Commissioner Pagets.
I think we covered the events and stuff. I have nothing else of real significance.
Great, thank you. 3C04, eastern half of the Cleveland Park Business District. Construction for the streetscape and drainage redesign and drainage improvement project continues. There have been substantial pedestrian safety and access issues at Porter in Connecticut. DDOT is aware. They've considered doing what's called channelizing a space for pedestrian traffic. That would mean rather than having the sidewalk would still remain closed, but there would be a space set aside on Connecticut Avenue for pedestrians to use to traverse that area. DDOT has not implemented that, and they're planning on wrapping up the construction at that corner soon. I was told about 2 weeks, but we shall see. I hope it goes quickly. I as always ask for everybody's patience as we get through this streetscape redesign. I think when we come out the other side, we will have a really beautiful looking neighborhood with or at least the streets and sidewalks will be. But yeah, that's it for 3C04. Well, we've lost Alvolo, unfortunately, and I think, I don't know, Cassandra, did you have anything you wanted to add on the business side because Swaley's not here either on what's happening in Cleveland Park?
No, I think everything has been covered.
Okay, and then again, there's this event September 25th, 1 to 5 p.m. that will benefit the Ward 3 pantry. Please bring non-perishable goods and cleaning supplies, and it is at Femme Fatale. And there will be music from the teachers at School of Rock, as Cassandra mentioned at the beginning of this meeting. So, all right. So, Commissioner, I guess, Dyer, you're up next.
There is nothing really to report. There was the Department of Transportation is putting speed humps in one area of what will no longer be part of 3C08 after the redistricting, but there was notice put out on the Woodley Park listserv and everything, and no comments were received. So
great, thank you. And Commissioner McWood.
I've got background noise here, so I apologize for that. I've got a plumber in the house. The one thing I wanted to report is that Flavio's, which is a restaurant in Georgetown, is definitely coming to Cleveland Park, and they will be going into the Cafe Deluxe space on Wisconsin Avenue. And there's build out of the one other vacancy in that little stretch that's Wisconsin and wraps around to the southern half of Macomb Street. We will be soon have all the storefronts totally occupied. That's it.
That's good news. Great. Okay. Thank you all. And we can't really vote on a motion to adjourn because we don't have the quorum necessary. So see you all in October. This meeting is over. Have a good night.
Thanks. You too.